Hey there, Zlatko here. Welcome to What is My Brain podcast. Thanks for tuning in. I get the opportunity to chat with fellow founders and business operators about their journey and how they got to where they are now, where they are going, and how they're going to get there. I'm planning on bringing guests and touching on topics such as running multiple businesses, executing ideas, and just spitballing about random topics and current events. It's a casual conversation, and that will hopefully bring value to anyone that decides to listen. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for tuning in. All right, Jeremiah, thank you so much for being on the podcast, buddy. I really appreciate it. You and I connected through a mutual friend, through Shopify stuff and everything. So I had a great conversation with you. I think we went on for like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And then when I started this podcast, I was like, I gotta have that guy on there. I gotta make sure that he comes on and talks. And you've had some big things happen since we last talked. So I want to kind of give you the floor. Introduce yourself. What do you do? Okay. What have you done? Whatever you want to share. And then, we can just riff from there.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's really great to catch up. It's loved getting to chat a little while ago. So I run a company called eCommerce. We are basically a survey platform for e-commerce businesses, and we were just recently acquired by WeCommerce. So WeCommerce is a publicly traded company. They really are kind of built on the Shopify ecosystem, but they buy and build companies that help e-commerce merchants do more. So they own Stamped, they own 460, they own Archetype Themes, and a few other companies you probably heard of, and then we're their most recent acquisition. So it's really cool to be part of a portfolio.
Congratulations, by the way, man. Congratulations.
Yeah, it's really fun. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's good. So it is everything I hoped it would be. I've been running my own businesses for 10 years, off and on. Not all of them have been this successful. In fact, I guess you could make the case none of them have been this successful. It's been kind of off and on. But the one thing that I really appreciate is just like the balance between support and autonomy in that ecosystem. And I would say just like off the bat for anybody who is a founder of an e-commerce tech business who's looking for, what the future might look like for them. I think that's an option everybody should be looking at. Is
awesome. Yeah, man. I've heard a lot of great things. I know a couple of people over there, and so let me ask you. I want to kind of take it back because I saw your tweet not too long ago, which had me really intrigued because I'm in the process of building, or we've already built it out, a Chrome extension. You did a WordPress plugin. You did something with that business. I'm curious to know, what is your back? Were you a developer in the past, or you just had always like kind of more of like a management gist and you were able to kind of gather people to build stuff that you had an idea around?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I built my first website. So I'm kind of a developer, not really. I'm a self-trained coder and never went to school for it. But when I was in high school, I took this multimedia English class. Basically, I took it because it was like an easy English class. But I created websites for like my projects that I would turn in, which is pretty cool. So turned it on a floppy disk. That was the good old days. The funny thing is, it's not that long ago. I'm in my early 30s. But yeah, floppy disks. Like that was how I turned in my website projects, and it was just like literally basic HTML, and that was it. And so I did that, built my first like super simple website when I was in college as a joke with a friend. It was called certifiedbadass.org, and it was basically like it was a quiz that like you could like certify it. Literally, it was just like a very basic PHP site, and the correct answer always changed, and so it would basically like you had a random chance of answering the right answer. And so like it would just give you your score, and basically your score was never greater than
that's
about
hilarious.
25%.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So that was just kind of a joke, but that's how I got started and just
Nice.
built
And
a
then
bunch of stuff
how
from
what
there.
was the I'm curious to know about the because I know the WordPress plugin like marketplace was actually kind of a hot
Hmm.
commodity for a long time. And I'm sure, a lot of people
Yeah.
I mean a lot of people build multi-million dollar businesses around that. Just same way with like now what Shopify is doing and all this. So I'm curious to know what
Hmm.
was what did your plugin do? And I guess my question would be whatever you can share in terms of like
Hmm.
how many you guys users you had, how you guys built up that user base. I mean, I'd love
Yeah.
to know a little bit more about that because I think those are. I'm always curious about people choosing. Like I've chosen to build certain things on top of Shopify, right? But sometimes people are like, "Well, you're dependent on that
Yep.
platform. If they kick you off, then you really don't have anything. So you're taking a much
Yep.
bigger risk."
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of risk in building on top of a platform for sure. So we did so it was 2012. At late 2012, I created a WooCommerce extension, and so at the time there was. WooCommerce was still fairly new. I think it had been about a year since it came out, but it was hot. It was something that a lot of people in the WordPress ecosystem were setting up their WooCommerce stores. And basically, like I was on a forum one day and I saw some people asking to do something that was very simple. And so I took it, turned it into a plugin. I spent, I don't know, a weekend on it. I had a day job. And so just kind of playing around. And it was called WooCommerce Menu Cart. That was the name of the plugin. And basically, it added a cart icon and the ability to click through to your cart on your website menu. At the time,
That's
that wasn't a thing.
crazy to
Like
think about.
everybody's got their cart icon. Yeah, like people were manually adding it to their website, and it was early days of e-commerce. So obviously, like the big stores were
Yeah.
well optimized and they knew what they were doing. But like, if you're adding your WooCommerce store to your WordPress site, like that wasn't
Right.
something that came with themes, any of that kind of stuff. So that was the plugin, and it took off. I put it in the extension marketplace, and then I don't know, probably 6 weeks after I launched it, I had a bunch of people downloading it. WordPress is one thing that's really nice about that ecosystem is you don't people just download code and then they install it on their website. So like you don't have to maintain anything. It's totally different. Like in Shopify, if you build an app, like you've got people hitting your servers. You've got like there's just a lot more complexity
Right.
to building a Shopify app. In WooCommerce, it's like here's a code snippet, download it and put it on your website. That's essentially what a WooCommerce extension is. And so that's all I had was just a basic website that let people download, and then I had like a
Okay.
donate button. And I think I made like $25 in donations in that first 6-8 weeks. And then this guy from the Netherlands reached out and he was like, "Hey, have you thought about making a paid version of this?" And I'd been thinking about it, and so he and I we just
That's
started
super cool.
collaborating, and so so it was like over a couple weeks on our free time, we built out a paid version, added a bunch of extra options, customization, things like that, and we put it out there. And I think day one we did a
Wow.
couple $100 in sales, and just kind of what we were surprised by was like people kept buying, like it just kept going. So the whole thing grew, and eventually that turned into more extensions. It turned into like the way that we'd set up the relationship. We kind of shared that one, and then
Right.
I owned the marketplace, and so I took a small cut of everything, and then we both started kind of building our own things. And so over time, I ended up leaving and sold the whole thing to
Nice.
Ava, is his name, who still runs it today, and it's a multi valid. I mean, SaaS
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
valuations are always, if you were to give it a SaaS
Right. Right.
valuation,
Right.
it's a multi-million-dollar company. In terms of actual revenue,
Right.
I'm
Right. Right.
like not going to talk about that stuff, but like it's a strong business and it serves probably half a
That's
million
awesome.
merchants
That's
today.
really
So
awesome.
yeah, and that it's just a different ecosystem. Like I think when I left, we made $2 per year per merchant. Like it wasn't like
Right.
a lot of money. Um, but it was a couple 100,000 merchants we worked with. So like it's still significant, and it's just fun to like browse the internet and see something you
Yeah,
built on
yeah. And
people's
then is that
websites.
how you
So
kind of fell into the no
um,
commerce
yeah,
thing now? I mean, like I know it's been like a long time, but I guess how long was your stretch doing the WordPress plugin stuff? And then I guess what did you do between that to get to like now you're kind
yeah.
of almost in the same sort of atmosphere, but now you're more in the Shopify space, or
Hmm.
I know have you guys gone multi-platform or are you guys just Shopify at the moment?
Yeah. Yeah, so we are
Yeah.
we don't have official integrations
Right.
with other platforms,
Oh,
but
cool.
it's multi-platform. You have the ability to deploy to other platforms. Yeah. Um, but yeah, with the WooCommerce stuff, that was
Nice.
basically 3 years that I did that. So yeah, I had that. I had a few other extensions. I guess a lot of them are still exist today. Avout, bless his heart, took took all that over and is maintaining it.
Yeah.
And I mean, he owns it now, but there was some junk's not the right word. Like it was good stuff, but like there was some stuff that like probably wasn't worth him taking over.
Right.
And
Right.
I appreciate that he did that so that the customers didn't have
Right.
to
Right. Right.
get left high and dry. So he's a good dude. If anybody's in the WooCommerce ecosystem, WP Overnight, Avout he's the man.
I
So
love that kind of
you want to
integrity,
be
dude.
working
That's
with him
really
for sure.
awesome. Yeah.
He's incredible. One of the
I
highest
love it.
integrity people you'll ever meet. I mean, it's the conversation always was, hey, we want to make more money, but how do we make sure that the merchant is taken care of first? And there were a lot of things that from a business decision standpoint would have been better for us and better for him in particular that we didn't end up doing because he wanted to make sure that the merchant experience was better. Simple things like doing annual billing instead of a one-time payment. Like it took years to kind of move to that because it was like, hey, we need
Right.
to make
Right.
sure this
Right.
is good
Right.
for the merchant at the end of the day. Which like now in retrospect seems kind of silly because everybody
Yeah.
does like,
Mm-hmm.
recurring billing, but at the time it was
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So one of
Love
the
it.
highest integrity people you'd ever meet. But yeah, so I did that for a while. In that process, I met this guy, Pearson Crass, who runs Lunar Solar Group, marketing agency. He had his own e-commerce brand. I ended up helping him on his website with
Yeah.
some stuff. It's kind of a long story, but we became friends. And so he launched a marketing agency in 2018. I, in between the WordPress thing and him launching that, I had my own e-commerce brand, and it wasn't very
Yeah.
successful. I learned a lot, but it was not. I lost my money basically, but it was a good experience. And so when Pearson kicked off the marketing agency, I helped him for a while, about a year, or not quite, close to it. Just kind of helping with some web development stuff. But the
Yeah.
agency life's not really for me. And so we've been talking for years about like, let's build a tech company. And so 2020 pandemic hits, everything's going crazy. And so we said, all right, let's make it happen. And so basically we incubated within Lunar Solar Group, and built it up to the point where
Oh,
we ended
that's
up selling
awesome.
to
That's really
e-commerce.
awesome. And
Yeah.
how I know you guys have been growing pretty rapidly. Was it just like a move for because of WeCommerce's like ecosystem that this was just like one of those things that they didn't have in their portfolio that was like, dude, this just makes all the sense in the world? Or like, well, I guess, or is it like the future building of like, I know you and I had talked about a lot of stuff on a private basis, but like, I'm
Yeah.
curious to know, like, has your merchant or client base like really expanded since that point, or were you guys on a really good like upward trajectory? Like, what did they, I guess, see in the space that made you guys so valuable to
Yeah,
them? I guess.
for sure. And I guess I
Yeah,
can't really
that's
talk
okay.
about
Yeah,
specific numbers because it's publicly traded, but like we launched our platform, our like full platform that we offer today out of
cool.
beta in September. And we ended up connecting with WeCommerce in November. At the time, we were looking at raising money, and that was the plan. We had this platform. We had a few hundred brands that were using the platform, and we knew that we
Right.
had something pretty powerful. And so the plan was to raise money, and we ended up chatting with WeCommerce. And I personally really connected with the team. I also felt like their vision was more closely aligned to ours than
Yeah.
the VCs I was talking to. And that's not a knock on VCs. It's not a knock on us. I think there's just like
Right.
certain products that are better
Yeah.
fits for certain types of outcomes. And at the end of the day, like my goal is to have our technology in the hands of
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of merchants someday. And to do that, we have to be affordable. The VCs looked at it and said, well, how do we make as much money as possible on a per merchant basis? Which makes sense. It's easier to scale to
Yeah.
that. There's less risk. And you have the ability to say, well, we have 1,000 merchants paying us. We're generating $1 million in monthly revenue off of 1,000 merchants. We can justify obscene
Yeah.
and again, not to disrespect anybody, obscene maybe isn't the right word, but like we can justify huge
Right.
multiples on that because we know that we can go from 1,000 to 10,000 and
Right.
maybe
Right. Right.
someday to 100,000, right? So like it's just a different model. And I think when we talked to eCommerce, they looked at what we had and they said, this is amazing. We work with 100,000 merchants today, and this makes sense. And so I think that was, to me, that was it. Like the money at the end of the day, I don't care as much
Right.
about money as
Right.
I care about impact. I want our product to be in the hands of hundreds of thousands of merchants, and I thought
I
that
love it.
eCommerce
I
gave us the
love it.
best
Yeah, and I
chance of
think
that.
that's a smart move on I think both ends of the spectrum because they have the ecosystem already to deploy those those resources and be like, hey, we just added a new app, and even if they get like a 2% click through rate, that's fucking
Mm-hmm.
amazing. So you know what I mean. So
Yeah,
no, that's really
yeah,
awesome. And are you guys?
for sure.
Let me ask you about some of the trends you're seeing. So I know you guys kind of basically what you guys do
Mm-hmm.
in short is you guys are post-purchase survey to know where the customer basically came from, how they found the brand, and then I think there's multiple questions people can ask, right? Like you can ask like, what do you like about our,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is. So is that summarized kind
Mm-hmm.
of the product in general? I mean,
Yeah, the one difference there is that we do deliver surveys outside the context of a confirmation screen too, but that is the
right.
primary
And
use
what are you
case of
guys
our
seeing?
product
Is
right
it
now. Yeah.
now like mostly like TikTok? I know that's obviously gone up. And like, what are the trends that you, or what surprised you? I guess is a
Yeah.
better question. Like, what did you look at and you're like, damn, I had no idea that these brands can do this much going through.
Yeah, for sure. So there's a couple of things that are really interesting, and we're working on ways to distribute this
Yeah,
information at scale a little bit better. But
I
word of
love
mouth is
it.
the number one channel. If you look across the entire ecosystem, yeah, it is. And I mean, I guess if you lump Facebook and
Right.
Instagram together under the umbrella of Meta, then that's actually higher. But if you just look at like Instagram versus Facebook versus Google versus word of mouth, like word of mouth is king. And uh, yeah, specific.
Right.
I don't know the exact number off the top of my head. It varies a little bit, but 25 to 30% of people are finding
I
brands through
love
word of
it.
mouth, from what we see. Um, yeah, and it
Hmm.
makes sense, right? Like that's how many of us buy products because somebody we know and care about and who we
And
respect is
And
using our
honestly, dude,
product.
so we're
It's
building
massive, right?
that's funny that you say that because we're building an incense, subscription-based incense brand internally at our agency. And
Okay.
so our whole thing has been, we help so many subscription-based businesses and all these, and we learn a lot from that, right? We learn almost like what works,
Hmm.
what doesn't, what works for certain brands that doesn't work for others, because it all varies. And one of the things that I remember doing from
Hmm.
I used to run a sock subscription business back in like 2014, 2015. And one of the most effective things that we
Okay.
did is inside of the box, put like a little QR code that says, give this to your friend. And there's
Hmm.
a 10% discount going through this QR code. And honestly, man, that flywheel there, like
Yep.
we used to go to the airport and you just wear the funky socks and people are like, oh, cool socks. And you give them one of the cards. They're just like, oh shit, I just got
Yeah.
basically got like 10%, 15% off of like a pair of socks. And that always stood out to me. And so now that we're building the incense brand, I was talking to my co-founder and I was like, you know what, we need to get something in there that's like, hey,
Yeah.
pass it on, like give this to somebody else. And that's like, more of like the direct marketing
Hmm.
within the product itself already.
Yeah. For sure. And I guarantee you the impact of that is higher than what you see in the actual numbers
Exactly.
that are coming through your system, right? I think that's one thing that a lot of people miss on influencer marketing and any sort of like word of mouth type marketing in general is that if you're paying somebody,
Yeah.
let's just look at the affiliate model. You pay somebody a 20% commission for referring a customer. They're not getting a 100%
No,
conversion rate
no.
on their link click, right? But they're still spreading the word. They're still having an impact. And so at the end of the day, you might be getting 2, 3, 4 times the impact of what you're actually seeing coming through on that bottom line of revenue. And I think that's something that a lot of brands miss. And it's hard. You don't know for
Right.
sure. There's no guarantee that that's happening, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
likely
that's
what's
awesome,
happening.
man. That's awesome.
Um, so
Now, let me ask you. So, what can you talk about? Sort of the next evolution of the product in terms of like whatever you can share. Where you guys, what's sort of
yeah.
the things you're seeing that you guys are looking to improve within the product,
Hmm.
some features that people are asking for? Because, like I said, there's the instance brand that we're doing. I just had notated like 2 weeks ago, maybe right before I left on my little vacation. I was like, we need to do like the no commerce thing, because now as we're learning about our client base and we want to know where they're coming from, especially having those cards, like we want to have all those options. And I've yet to have that conversation with my co-founder to be like, hey, we need this at the kind of at the end of the whole process, or wherever, even if it's within an email or whatever it is.
Yeah. For sure. And I think so.
Yeah.
One thing before I get into like the product development piece, one issue that we have right now that we're really kind of staffing up and working on addressing is just education of how you can use our product. So like with what you're talking about, one really cool example of what you could do is like actually like drop a QR code in a box that links to a survey. Like we have the tech in place to be able to do that. All you have to do is just grab your survey link and connect it to a QR code. And then, so that kind of stuff is like a big piece of what we're doing to say like, hey, you have all of these touch points with customers, and you should be collecting data at those touch points. And we have the ability today to help you collect data at those touch points. And there's some additional things that we'll be doing with our product to make that easier throughout this year. So that's one piece of it. But yeah, a lot.
And
of
then what about Shopify POS? Are you guys printing on the receipt like the QR code?
No, but I think like that's the kind of stuff that we're looking at, right? Like how do we get into more touch points? How do we leverage the technology that we have today to make it better? And then ultimately, at the end of the day, we're really trying to again, we're taking that response data, we're tying it back to the customer record whenever we can, and that just it expands the meaningfulness of the data. It also helps you understand specific customers.
Back to the zero party piece of it, right?
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing that's really important with what we do that ties back to that as well is our entire motto, for lack of a better term, is that we want to turn data into action. And so everything that we're focused on is how do we take data and make it into action. And so we do that, one, by providing insight. And so we're constantly looking at how do we provide more insight, give better understanding of what this data actually means. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have a data team, you can look at the responses to a question and you may or may not actually understand the impact of that. So one, how do we surface better insight? But then two, how do we take the data in real time and turn it into action? And so that's one thing that's really powerful and that we're trying to do more of is, so like, let's say you delivered a QR code in a package and you link to a survey. That's a great opportunity to ask some questions about the experience, packaging, product, all of that. And then if you identify that person had a great experience, ask them to leave a review. If they had an awful experience, say, great, we're connecting somebody from customer support to you right now, and auto trigger that email, all that stuff gets taken care of in real time, right? So it's not like we make a lot of assumptions about the actions that somebody might want to take at a certain transaction point. But what we've found with surveys is that if you ask people some questions, one, they're more likely to engage with it. But then two, they're actually more likely to take whatever action that is too. So don't go straight to the action and don't assume that this is the right action. Leverage data to get the right action to the right person, and that's going to get you a whole lot better engagement rate.
Build those breadcrumbs, just keep it going all the way through. I love it. No, that's really awesome. Now, what trends are you guys seeing? Any like unique trends that in the state of like e-commerce right now that's kind of taking you for a whirl, and you're like, damn, I didn't know. Like, are you guys implementing like anything on your side that you're like, hey, this trend is kind of taking off right now? Because I know like nowadays like quizzes and there's a lot of stuff out there that's like really starting to funnel a lot of sales and different things like that. So I know you're talking about the touch points, but is there anything else that you're like, damn, I had no clue that this was going to be one of the things we're going to be handling?
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of keeping a pulse on a lot of things. Obviously, like text message marketing.
I was about to ask you, do you guys do surveys via SMS, like where somebody scans or sends like or you guys set up a follow up and say, hey, hit one for great experience or whatever it is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
No, not today, but that's the kind of stuff we're looking at, right? So and I don't have any specifics around that and what that would look like, but that kind of stuff, right? So like text message marketing is big. My first startup actually was text message marketing in 2010.
Way too early.
And very expensive. Like you think text is expensive
It was
now.
like
It was
$5 a
5 times the
text, and
cost
it's
back
like
then.
still messaging rates apply.
It was, yeah, I forget the specifics, but like you had to pay $1,500 a month
Yeah,
for dedicated short code. It's like
yeah,
long-term contracts, like yeah, message rates were through the roof, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, it was expensive and we lost a lot of money.
yeah,
But again, a good experience. But so like SMS obviously big. Um, the shifts in, I mean, a lot of what we're looking at is just helping our customers better understand where to put ad dollars. At the end of the day, that's the biggest thing, and it's something that
right.
I can't tell you like we've figured it out, but it's something we're constantly looking at. Just like how do we optimize our tech
Hmm.
to make that better for them, because that's the biggest pain point for most of our customers right now. So there's that, and then with that, looking at things like to your earlier point, TikTok. Like TikTok is through the roof in terms of the percentage of revenue it's driving. Like and this
Yeah,
is all based off of survey data, so there's not like it's not perfect and
right.
sample sizes have changed and all that, but we're looking at basically about a 20x increase in the percentage of revenue year over
Wow.
year coming from TikTok. And there's a little bit of bias in that, right? Like you're probably using you're more likely to use our platform if you're driving revenue from those kinds of sources, but at the same time, just as a
Right.
percentage of revenue over the last year, we've seen that change. So it may not be 20x, but I guarantee you it's at least 10, right? There's a massive change in the percentage of revenue that brands are driving from TikTok. And then the other thing that we see that's really interesting on the ad spend side, we don't see the drop off in terms of people saying that they came from Facebook and Instagram that other people are seeing in their ad spend. And I don't know quite the right way to say this, but essentially, like it almost looks like the drop in people coming from Facebook and Instagram is more correlated to a drop in ad spend than it is to a drop in the
Oh,
effectiveness
okay,
of the
okay, okay,
ads.
okay.
Um, and that I am not going to like stand
Right,
on
right,
that and say that that is the truth, but that's how it looks from the data that we have. And so that's one thing that we just talk to brands a lot about is like, hey, be careful about pulling your spend back too much because the numbers may look bad today, but a lot of that's because the platforms don't have
right.
the data they used to have, and so they're probably underreporting. From what we can tell, they are underreporting, and so be very careful about how much you're pulling back ad spend because you're not going to see the full effect today or tomorrow. You're going to see it in 3
Exactly.
months, 6 months, 12 months, and that's kind of what we're seeing is the drop off in the discovery revenue, as we call it, coming from those channels is more correlated with spend dropping 3-6 months ago than it is with platform
Right, right.
effectiveness
Wow,
decreasing.
interesting.
And it's, yeah, and
Right,
again,
right,
I'm
right,
not going
right.
to say that that's the truth for
That's
sure.
trying
That's
to
just what it looks like from
read
where we
between the
stand.
lines a little
So,
bit of like what's going on. Yeah, absolutely.
exactly. Yeah. And to be
Right.
clear, that's ecosystem wide. I'm not, especially on a brand to brand basis, I can't tell you
Right,
that
right,
like your
right,
ads are
right, right,
working
right.
phenomenally because some
Yeah,
brands are getting hit a lot harder
absolutely.
than
And
others.
in terms of
So
TikTok, are you seeing a lot of that growth with like up and coming brands or already established brands that are like, because I know do you guys mainly, am I wrong thinking you
yeah,
guys mainly work with like already like established more like enterprise type brands? Like you guys do have a lot of the bigger clientele, right?
yeah. I mean, it varies, but there's a lot of brands on our platform that are doing like 1,000 orders a month plus is kind of like
Okay.
where we
Okay.
see most people coming in that are like doing a lot with us.
Right, right.
There's a lot of smaller brands too, but yeah, so at that point you're talking, 50 to 100K in monthly revenue probably plus. So yeah, we have brands that are 8 figures in monthly revenue. We have brands that are,
Yeah.
you know, $300 a month, but obviously like your insight at $300 a
Right,
month is a
right,
whole
right,
lot
right,
less
right.
than at 10
Absolutely.
million a month. Um, so yeah, I would say like the ones that we see scaling really effectively on TikTok are probably in that
Okay.
like 50K a
Okay.
month plus revenue range. And they're able to like they've got enough data to be able to like, look at it and say, okay, we feel confident in these results. But yeah, a lot of brands are using it for TikTok in particular. The attribution is really weak, and so they look at survey response data to scale, and we have a lot of brands we work with that have gone from 1-2% of revenue on TikTok to
So you guys
30% of
actually
revenue on
sometimes in some
TikTok.
cases for bad attribution on the social media side, you guys almost act like a fallback to some of these folks to know where they actually came back. Oh, that's
Yeah,
I didn't even flip my mind state to even think like that, but
yeah,
that's really interesting actually.
for sure. And it's not perfect. I mean, what I tell people is like, whatever,
Of
you
course.
should use multiple forms of attribution first of all. So like use survey data, use your in-platform ad data, use your Google
Yeah.
Analytics or whatever it is to look at like click data. Now you've got systems like Triple Whale
Right.
or Northbeam that can kind of tell you some like ad campaign level data, which is really cool, which you can't really get from like a Google Analytics or from what we offer. But if you've got a platform like that, layer in your survey data too, because
Yeah.
it's going to be different. And it's going to be different on a per customer basis. And so we actually, with surveys, we recommend kind of a 4-question approach. So the first question is, how did you first hear about us? So we're looking for what's the first touch point they remember. I guarantee you it's not always the
Right.
first touch point. There's going to be others, right? Like they may have seen an ad and then a friend said something and they remember the friend. They didn't remember the first ad. Granted, if that's the case, you probably don't have that data anyway because it's been long enough that the cookies are expired, all that kind of stuff, right? So we look at that, like what's your first touch point, and then we ask what brought you to our site today. And so those 2 questions really get at like what's the discovery point, and then that's really the first thing we're answering there. And then the second thing is what's the purchase intent driver. And so understanding those 2 things and understanding that they're different can have a ton of value. So you look in your Klaviyo may be telling you that you're driving $100,000 in revenue. That's not wrong, but like that's not what, like they discovered you somewhere else first, right? So it's not your new customer revenue, or to some extent it may be, but like there's another channel that's responsible for that. So what we like to do is look at like, okay, how much revenue if somebody says that I came to the site today because of an email, that's them literally purchasing because you sent them an email. And so that's an important number to know. Or if they say it's because of a text message, or it's because I saw an ad, or because a friend reminded me about you, right? Like that's where we get at like, what's that purchase channel that drove that action today? And then from there, we have 2 additional questions that we love to throw in that are not as high value, but depending on your brand can be really high value. One of them is if somebody said they came today from an ad, ask them where they saw the ad. So that's kind of your last touch ad, understanding that. Yep. And that also kind of cuts through the noise. So you're looking at your ad specific data as opposed to like your top level that includes word of mouth and press and all that sort of stuff. And then the last question is, how long did you know about us before making your first purchase? And that's a really important piece of information, because what we typically find, it's not always true, but typically your social discovery channels take longer.
That's the nurturing process right there. Yeah.
If somebody said that it's the nurturing process. Yeah, exactly. And so the impact of that is that when you can understand that somebody is more likely to purchase 12 plus months after they found your brand on Facebook, that means your Facebook ads are far more effective than what you're seeing in the first 7 days. And that can have an impact on how you spend money. Like we've had some brands that have 80% of their customers coming in 3 plus months after discovery. And so that's like their Facebook ads look awful. They can't hardly break even, all that. But we know that person you've got a 300% more higher likelihood that they purchase 3 months from now than they do in the first.
Do you guys associate a lot of that with the
so,
cost of the product too? Like if it's a $20 product versus a $300 product, I mean, I'm sure that has also a big effect.
Yeah. That's a really good. That's not something we dig into. Some brands do that kind of analysis on their own, but yeah, talking about like what's the kind of insight that we can generate that leads to action. Those are the kinds of things that we do look at. Like how could we help somebody better understand this? So yeah, it's really more based off of like specific responses, and like overlaying response data. We do some audiences for like for order and customer data as well, but
that's awesome.
Extent.
Cool. Well, I appreciate all that. So I wanted to kind of quickly ask you, since you seem like also like an ideas guy, you've built a bunch of stuff. what yeah,
I love
without,
ideas.
you know, obviously everyone do your own research. What are some things out there that you're like, damn, somebody needs to build this idea because like every e-commerce person needs this. And I'll
Mm.
tell you one of mine that we're working on. It's
Yeah, love to
dude,
hear
it's
it.
actually really interesting. So I've been realizing that a lot of people, we're talking about Facebook ads. You were just mentioning how much people are spending. And I went down Twitter not too long ago, and I
Hmm.
see a bunch of people saying, "Man, I really wish I can get through all of the comments in my ads when I'm spending, you know, 10K a month or 10K a day or whatever it is on my
Mm.
ads." And so my team right now is actually working on taking an account, Facebook ads account, pulling in all the ads and creating a
Uh-huh.
commonality word bubble at the top that allows you to see what those ads are basically saying. Is the
Mm.
product good? Is it bad? With some feedback, and then you can make a couple different choices. You could pull that
Mm-hmm.
ad back, get back to those customers in one way or another, whether it's like replying or figuring out like, oh man, one of our products is really
Yeah.
like broken or something's not working. Or it could be like, oh, this is working
Yep.
really, really well. We're seeing a lot of like people giving positive, then we can funnel more money into that. So basically more of a it's almost like feedback through ads, but giving you almost like just at the top,
Mm-hmm.
like here's the, you know, from the size of the word, one big word is going to be like, you know, broken
Mm-hmm.
product, and you got to be like, that's a big red flag, we got to take a look at this ad
Yep.
and what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I love that. That's so.
Yeah.
I have a quick question about that. Is that are you able to actually pull in the comments and allow replying in line and like within your app, or is that like they still have to
So
go
that's
back
going
into
to
the
be
platform to
probably the
reply?
second phase of it. We just want to get the data and just basically show them like
Okay.
most people are saying this
Yep.
about this ad. So you got to go back now and just we're giving you at
Yep.
least like the top level. We're not giving you the granular, but I think replying to comments and
Yep.
stuff, it shouldn't be too hard to do in like phase two. But we just want to make sure that we get that data in there first.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think that is such a good idea. There's so
Because people spend a
many
lot of money on this shit,
like
man. Like it's crazy. I
so
just met
much.
somebody not too long ago, and they're like, "We spend 10K a day," and I was
Yeah.
like, "10K a day? That's
Yeah.
crazy." But he's like, "We make like
I
70,"
know.
so it's like,
Right. Yeah, we've got a lot of customers like that where it's just like hundreds of thousands, if not millions a month in ad spend, and
yeah,
it adds up. And yeah, that's the thing is like optimizing. You got one bad ad like that, and that might cost you
yeah,
$10,000. You might be losing ten or twenty thousand
exactly.
dollars a
Or
month
breaking
on
even
ads like
amongst
that.
all your ads and different things.
So
Like, yeah. So
right,
perfect. No, that's
yep,
awesome.
for
That,
sure.
that was one
Yeah,
of my
that's cool.
ideas. But what do you have on your plate that you've been even brewing over, and you're like keep seeing the issue, and you're just like somebody needs to build that damn thing. I know
Yeah,
there's a lot of stuff around like gifting and all this
I
other
mean,
stuff as well.
yeah, gifting is interesting. I think so. What one issue that I think is just kind of coming out
Right.
with all the privacy stuff and an issue maybe isn't even the right word, but
Let's
in
call it an
terms of
opportunity. Call it an
customer opportunity, yes. In terms of
yeah.
customer acquisition, I think the biggest thing that's going to come out of all the changes over the last few months,
Yeah.
and I might be wrong about this is just my opinion, but I think what we're going to see is the big platforms, Facebook and the like, kind of becoming your like go to like almost impression based ads, right? Like instead of it being your performance driver over time, I think it's going to shift into more of like that's
Okay.
my brand play. I'm driving my brand stuff there, and I think the more performance acquisition sort of stuff is going to come from smaller ad platforms that are
Mm-hmm.
very community oriented, right? So it's a very specific set of people uses a specific product, and you want to put your product in those places. So, and I actually have no idea how good it is, but
Yeah.
Instacart's an example of that, right? So it's a place where they have product placement ads. I use
Right.
Instacart fairly regularly. I've probably only bought like, as far as I know, a couple of things off of an ad, but it
Right.
does work to some extent, right? And it's a consumable product. Your LTV on that's probably pretty high. Like there's a lot of if they can crack that, there's a lot of benefit there for specific types of products, but it's limited to a specific customer type. It's
Right.
limited to a specific product. And I think it would probably have a lot of value for both parties in that transaction. And so I think what we're going to see is a lot more of those like mini platforms. That gets harder for the ad buyer because now you've got to distribute your ad spend in more places. But I think that's where we're going to start to see a lot of bang for your buck in time. And so there's a lot of opportunity to create those sorts of communities and
Yeah, I think that
platforms,
the
as far as I'm
community
concerned.
driving thing is really really huge, and especially building out. I mean, it's like you can create right now you can create a Discord channel and bring put a public link out
Hmm.
there and get like 10 people to come in. Out of those 10 people, you're going to convert a high amount because they're there for a specific reason, and then branching that out. And I think
Yep.
I agree with you, and I think for something like that, it's also going to be how do people get something in return? So if I'm one of these 1,000 or 100 people in this community and I'm
Yeah.
spreading the word outside of this, like I'd like to get some sort of benefit, whether it's an affiliate fee or a referral link or whatever it
Yeah.
is. And and that's why to me it's like membership based brands. That's what we're building with our incense brand. I think that's
Hmm.
to me it's more important to have, let's say, a solid 1,000 customers that are engaged with us, that are trying out our new product, our new scents, and all these other things than it is for
Yeah.
me to continue spending a bunch of money trying to get new customers, and then a lot more churn and different things like that. So for me, I definitely think that the community
Yep.
building is like a really tough cookie to crack, and I think a lot of people are doing it really well. And I think
Yep.
if you're not on social, you're really going to have a hard time building that community because it's just people have like this much fucking attention span at this point, and everything else is like out the window. So if you don't catch
Right.
them, it's you're gone.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I think brand at the end of the day, brand is not
Yeah.
going anywhere, and I feel like people can sit here and do like
Yep.
the drop shipping thing or this and try to build something. But man, when you see the
Hmm.
DNA of that brand all the way through every channel, and you see the consistency, and you
Yep.
see all of those high quality product images and everything that ties back to that name that you
Hmm.
built, I think at the end of the day that's always going to win. And building a community around that is going to be really really, I think, effective.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. So I think to me that's a big opportunity, is community oriented thing, and
Right.
retention of customers, and trying to crack that stuff. And there are some brands doing it really well, but I think most haven't. And then the question that still will have to be answered, and
Yeah.
I don't know if we can answer this today. I think this is a 3-5 years down the road. Is at what point are people tapped out of being involved in
Yeah.
communities, and when
Exactly.
does
Yeah.
everything shift
Exactly.
again? Because I
Yeah,
think
the
that
burnout,
comes
the
at some point
community
as well.
burnout thing, because
Um,
the NFT
the
community is
burnout,
just
you're right?
burning
Community
us out
burnout,
right now. Like everyone's on Discord, everyone's all these
right?
things. You're absolutely right. I'm so glad you brought that up because
Yeah.
I think it is.
So
I feel like I'm starting to get there. I had to like jump off of some of these platforms. I'm like, all right, hold on, let me take a deep breath because I'm just like
yep,
all over the place with some of these things, and you feel like, oh, I'm gonna
yeah,
miss out on this, I'm
yep,
gonna miss out on that. And it's like, dude, you're not gonna catch every wave. Like you're not gonna catch every wave. Yeah.
yeah.
So
You can't. Yeah.
let me ask you on a personal note. What do you when you're not working? What are you doing for fun out here? You do any sports, any activities, anything to keep yourself just balanced over the span of now getting acquired and all these different things going on at e-commerce?
Yeah. I mean, so honestly, pandemic like really threw me off. I had a pandemic, started a company a couple months later, had a baby a
Congratulations.
couple months after that. So like the last couple of years, thank you. So the last like 2 years have been rough from
Yeah.
like a personal exercise sort of standpoint. So I mean, I walk as much as I can, run a little bit, but my big thing that I'm trying to get back
Hell
into
yeah.
now is basketball. So love playing basketball. Um, I like to joke that someday I'm going to be a
Yes.
professional basketball player.
Hey,
So,
dude, if you go international, if you go international,
highly
you can make it
unlikely.
happen, dude.
Yeah. Or do well enough with the business thing, I just start my own team, and then I could be like, I don't even have to be on the court.
Exactly.
Just like let me
Just
sit on
be
the bench
involved.
and
Yeah.
practice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my joke, but I love playing basketball. That's kind of my activity. So I just played it again for the first time a couple of weeks ago, and going to be playing
Perfect.
again this weekend. So got to slowly work my way back into it. Now that I'm in my 30s, it's harder. So
How big is your team? How big is your team at No
but it's
Commerce? Do
fun.
you guys do like retreats or anything together or any of that stuff? Have you guys done any gatherings?
Yeah, so we're a small team. We're under 10 at the moment.
Yeah.
We'll be growing, but yeah, we don't. We will be doing those kinds of things. I mean, we've only been in business
Right.
for 18 months, and it's kind of been like really going after it for the last 6. So yeah, all that stuff's coming for sure. But eCommerce is a bigger company though, so we jokingly we're talking about putting together a eCommerce basketball team. Somebody at one of the other companies actually used to play professional basketball. So
Oh wow.
yeah, she's super cool. But Anyway, so there's like, I think we could probably put together a decent team and maybe take on some other tech companies out there. So no commerce by ourselves though. We can't field a decent team. Just no offense to the other people on the team, but I'm the best basketball player, and that's not saying a whole lot.
Oh, I love it, man. I love it. Well, no, this was a pleasure. I appreciate you kind of chatting about everything. Is there anything else you wanted to cover? Anything you wanted to mention? Whether it's where people can find you, reach out to you, how you guys can help their brands and everything else. Feel free to plug anything and everything.
Yeah.
And if you want to chat about anything else, I'm open to it. But I feel like we got through a good amount in terms of all things e-commerce, man.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, I just appreciate you having me on. It's really good to chat, and I feel like it's a lot of talking on my end, but anyway,
that's what I like to hear, man. That's why you're here. I just want to, I'm curious in people's journeys, and I think everyone comes from a different place, and hopefully there's something in this that whether it's a brand or even myself. I mean, we're building brands, and just knowing some of these ins and outs and what's working, and attribution and stuff. These are little gems that hopefully people could take out of it and be like, oh damn, I didn't even think about it. Because I mean, you had me looking up at the wall like, oh shit, I didn't even think about that way. So you know what I mean? So.
Yeah. Cool. That's good. Yeah. And I mean, we obviously we do surveys for e-commerce brands, but our big thing is we want to be helpful. Like at the end of the day, that's the word we use to describe everything we do across the entire ecosystem, across our customer base, even competitors. Like we try to be the company that's out there doing whatever we can to help. And so, we want to, if you just want to chat, literally, if you want to chat about how you can use a competitor's product better, we're all about it. So that's kind of our approach, because at the end of the day, we believe that whatever we can do to help you, whatever we can do to make our product better is going to be better for the ecosystem, because we believe in the data that we're helping collect, and so that's kind of our approach.
I love it, man. Are you big on Twitter? Anywhere that people can reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. You could just Jeremiah Prummer is my tag. You can follow me there. I'll follow you back as long as your headline tells what.
And you're not an egg. And you're not an egg.
You are. Yeah, I follow basically everybody back who looks like a real person. If you don't look like a real person, then I won't. But and then I'm on LinkedIn. I love connecting.
Perfect, man. Well, thank you so much. And we'll need to do a part 2 when things really ramp up for you guys. Now that you've found a home for your baby there. So that's awesome, dude. So again, Jeremiah, thank you so much. Always been a pleasure chatting with you, dude. And I'll make sure to keep you posted when this comes out, and we can hopefully spread the word and help some brands out, man.
For sure. Yeah.
All right. Cheers, man.
It's awesome. Appreciate it.
Well, you made it to the end of the episode. Thank you so much for tuning into What Is My Brain podcast. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you got some value out of it. Make sure you hit the subscribe button or the follow button to get notified when new episodes are live. I'm out. Thank you.